Hey everybody, welcome back to Brownble. I am very glad you're here. Today we're having another Q&A. It's been a while since we've had one of these, and your questions and your comments have been pouring in. I've tried to respond to all of them personally. If it sometimes takes me a little bit of time, be patient. I always answer back. But we've had this kind of avalanche of questions and comments, and I'm slowly getting into them. And today we're going to cover some of the ones that were either, very frequent or very common between all of our viewers and listeners and readers of the blog, and some that I thought were really interesting and that I wanted to kind of showcase today. We're going to talk about so many things in today's video. We're going to talk about plant-based meat alternatives. We're going to talk about tofu and how to prepare it deliciously. We're going to talk about feeling a bit emotional when you're going through this transition. We're going to talk about my opinion on oil-free diets and raw diets and lots more. So let's get started right now. Okay, so for our first question, Anna asks, is it safe to eat some of the packaged vegan meat alternatives? So here we're talking about not only the veggie burgers, but the vegan no chicken and the nuggets and all of the, processed, a little more processed meat alternatives that are vegan. She's asking whether or not these are safe to eat. Now, here's my opinion. You've heard me talk about this many times, right? When we're transitioning, we have a very strong attachment to foods that we had for years as meat eaters. This is normal. We sometimes crave the texture, the flavor, certain dishes that were prepared with these foods. And when it comes to meat alternatives, I always tell you that they're a great tool when you're transitioning, right? To sort of not feel that they've pulled the rug from under you, and they can be great alternatives for when you're going through this switch, right? But what about long term? Can we have these foods? So here's my opinion. My opinion is they're not all created equal. So when it comes to vegan meats and vegan cheeses and all of the alternatives, check the ingredients. More and more companies are making these foods with completely whole foods, and some, especially kind of the older generation of these products, are a little bit more processed, and they contain other things that are, that sometimes you don't recognize in an ingredients list. So check the ingredients and check to see if you recognize the ingredients, and try to pick the ones that are the most natural, that are made with ingredients that you know and that you would probably have in your kitchen, right? And I think that when we choose options that, are mostly whole foods based, and we balance this out with including lots of whole foods throughout our diet, I think it is totally fine to include these products. These products can be filling. These products are often fortified with nutrients, and this can help us meet nutrient requirements as vegans. They're often extremely high in protein, which, believe it or not, sometimes we can have meals in which we're not eating as much protein as we should. So this is a way to balance things out. We don't eat in the same way every day. So these foods, I know there's a huge movement and all of this clean eating stuff that's going on, and all of this buzz that is teaching us don't touch processed foods. Well, when it comes to vegan nutrition, lots of these meat alternatives nowadays are being made with better ingredients, and they can help us meet nutrient requirements. They can help us stay sane. So what I always suggest is, sure, if you're craving something special, if you want something meaty in texture, make sure to buy these, but include them and round out your meals, and just make sure to rotate them with natural foods and the whole foods, lots of legumes, lots of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, all of the wonderful foods in the plant kingdom that can give us all of the nutrition that we need. So if you're balancing these things out, I don't see why you need to skip them altogether. And always check the ingredients list to see if they're made mostly with ingredients you can recognize. So many brands are now making foods and packaged foods with things that we know and we eat. I'm going to talk about this a little further down our Q&A, because two more questions have something that is kind of closely related. But as you know, our perspective here at Brownble is that when we add additional restriction on top of the already inherent restriction in a vegan diet, things can become overwhelming, they can become difficult, people start having sometimes some nutrient deficiencies when we're restricting so much. And I think it's good to have balance. If you're enjoying foods, if these foods are satisfying for you, and you're balancing them out with all of these incredible natural foods, there's no problem. Okay, next up in our list of questions, Louise asks, I've always hated tofu. I get that, Louise. I was a tofu hater myself before I went vegan. Is there a secret to learning how to prepare it so that it tastes good? Yes, tofu is a little mysterious creature, and we have to learn to prepare it properly. It's something that is it's actually really simple to prepare, but first of all, we have many different types of tofu. I remember trying tofu for the first time when I was kind of thinking of making more steps to being vegan. I bought the wrong kind of tofu, and I think I might have thrown it out because it was horrible. It was just horrible. I couldn't stand the smell, I couldn't stand the texture, and I can tell you now that tofu is one of my favorite foods on this planet. Number one, because I learned what type of tofu it is that I like, and number two, because I learned how to cook with it. So if you're a member of our online program or you've taken our free breakfast and brunch course, you have seen me use tofu in many different applications. We can make crispy tofu, we can make kind of grilled tofu, we can put it on the barbecue with some barbecue sauce. We can crumble it up to make tofu scrambles. We can cream it up and use it with some seitan, which is made out of gluten, to make sausages at home. I mean, the applications are endless. But usually when I have people come to me and tell me that they don't like tofu, it's because they're buying the wrong type. First of all, we have Japanese style tofu, which is a very, very soft tofu. It's what you eat in miso soup, for example. Those very squidgy, spongy, almost tasteless pieces of tofu. That is the tofu I bought before I went vegan that I did not like. I didn't like that kind of gummy texture that was kind of very, very soft. Another type of tofu that should not be used, for example, in cooking or in stir fries is silken tofu. You've seen me use silken tofu before. Silken tofu is a very, very soft tofu that they sell in these little aseptic kind of packages, boxes, that you actually cream up to make creamed dishes, right? Dressings or puddings, or you use it for quiches and things like that, right? So that one is also not appropriate for cooking. What you want when it comes to tofu is to buy super firm or extra firm. And here you can either press the tofu using a tofu press, or you can put it on top of a colander with some weight on top. You can put a bowl with some cans or something and just let the liquid come out. And some brands now come so pressed that you don't even have to do this. So just kind of play around with it. Try both techniques. By releasing the excess water that it comes in, you're kind of creating an even firmer version. And then with that very, very firm block of tofu, you can do so many things. You can add them to stir fries. You can marinate the tofu in barbecue sauce or jerk seasoning and some other herbs and spices, and put it in skewers with vegetables and pop them on the grill. There are so many things. You can do little tofu cubes or tofu slabs and put them on the grill, or grill them up, get them golden brown on a pan and serve a sauce over that. There are many recipes at brownble.com if you want to check them out, and countless others in our online program, My Brownble, and countless others online. So just try to buy some different brands. Even within brands of the super firm and extra firm varieties, there are some that are even greater than others. I have one brand that I love that they sell here in Spain called Biogra. It's my absolute favorite. It is calcium set. This is another thing you can look for when you're looking for tofu. If it's calcium set, it will provide a huge boost of calcium. And this is my favorite. It comes out beautifully every time. And you can bake tofu in the oven and get it nice and crispy. Just find a recipe and use it, but use it on a tofu that is really, really firm. And then try it out. If you don't like it, there are other alternatives to this kind of texture and vegan meats that you can try as well. When it comes to the baking of that tofu, one of my favorite recipes is to make these little very, very crispy tofu cubes that don't even have to. It's kind of the texture you would get if you're deep frying tofu, but you don't use a single drop of oil or anything like that, because The oven does all of the work, and you're basically cutting up the tofu into little cubes. You put them in a bowl, you add a splash of soy sauce, you add some oregano or thyme, you add a little bit of freshly ground pepper, a little bit of liquid smoke, you toss that, put it on a very shallow baking sheet over parchment paper. You put the oven rack higher to the top, turn the broiler on really, really high as it goes, and put the pan in the oven. And just let those be, don't touch them. It's going to crisp them up, they're gonna puff up a little bit. It's what I like to call tofu croutons because they're basically like croutons. I put them on top of my vegan Caesar salad and I love them, but I also use them on top of veggie bowls and stir fries. So there you have a quick recipe that you don't even have to measure and you can make right now. Okay, this is a question that doesn't have one author because I got this question so many times in the past few weeks, and I think it's very important to talk about it. You've heard me mention it countless times in the blog, in our podcast. If you haven't listened to our podcast, go check it out. It's called the Brownble Podcast. You can find it on iTunes or Stitcher. But this is a question I've gotten so many times that I want to kind of talk about it here. And the question is, what are your thoughts on oil-free diets? I come from a different perspective than many other people. I come from a place of having a very messy relationship with food and restricting foods, and I personally don't like to add any additional restriction over the inherent restriction of a vegan diet in which you're excluding the meat, dairy, and the eggs, right? To me, excluding the oils and being very rigid about it was adding additional kind of pressure, and it wasn't making me feel good. And of course I tried it because I've kind of tried many things throughout the years that I've been vegan. For me, it wasn't the right choice. If this is working for you or you have a medical condition in which your doctor is recommending this, then absolutely go for it. But from everything I've read, it isn't 100% necessary. In fact, vegan diets can start becoming very, very rigid and strict. People tend to leave them behind. So I'm going to link to some of my favorite dietitian nutritionists talking about the oil issue below. And I love that they have this very open-minded view of what a vegan diet should look like. Oils can help a diet feel very satisfying. They can help you increase your intake of fruits and whole grains and beans when you have a satisfying meal that you look forward to, right? When something is so restrictive and we try to be what I call a food superhero or an eating superhero, what happens is the opposite effect, right? You don't feel satisfied, you feel deprived, and eventually you might quit a diet that in the long run would have been so much healthier for you. So in my case, as you know, and also because I'm a cook and oil produces certain textures that are really amazing and delicious, in my perspective, I don't skip oils, right? There are some applications in which using a little bit less oil can help, in which you can learn some oil-free techniques to kind of balance things out from time to time if you feel like it. But in my opinion, adding additional restriction hurts instead of helps. Our next question is from Meg. I love this question. Meg asks, what is your go-to meal on a busy day? Now, I have a whole video that you can check out on meals that just need assembling, which is very practical if you're short on time, or if you're very busy on a particular time of your life where you can't make these very elaborate meals. And you've got lots of ideas there. But right now, and of course this changes, my meals change so much throughout the year, guys. They really depend on what I'm craving, on what's in season, on what I've been testing for the online program and the YouTube channel. But right now, I would say that my favorite go-to meal for when I'm very, very pressed for time is either tacos or a wrap. Why? Because I always have the components in my fridge. Since this is my go-to meal, I have the components and all I need to do is assemble. So here's my favorite quick wrap. I'm gonna tell you my favorite quick taco as well. So my favorite quick wrap is you just grab some whole wheat tortillas. I always keep whole wheat tortillas in the house. You can use corn tortillas as well. And what I do is I kind of put some hummus on one side and a little bit of pesto on the other side. Sometimes I don't have both, so I just use one. You can use guacamole or just mash up some avocado for the other side. And then inside I can use any leftover beans I have, chickpeas or anything like that. But because you have that hummus, that isn't even that necessary. So what do I put inside? I put lots of greens, I put chopped peppers, and I put some onions. Sometimes I grill up the onions and peppers and add some mushrooms, for example. I put some grated carrot, I put some avocado pieces, and I add a little drizzle of either apple cider vinegar or red wine vinegar or lemon juice just to give it a little kind of fresh taste, a little bit of salt, pepper, and I wrap it up and I serve it next to some roasted potatoes or something like that. Gatos loves our little crispy oven potatoes, which you can find in our online program and our YouTube channel. When I make this wrap, it goes really well. You can have it with some kale chips, you can have it with a salad, and it's absolutely amazing. So all it is that hummus and those, fresh vegetables or cooked vegetables, any leftovers you have, and you wrap it up and it's done. The combination of the pesto and the hummus is my favorite, but if you don't have one or the other, you can substitute with any spread that you like. Now, when it comes to my favorite taco, I think you've heard me talk about this one in the podcast because this is one of Gatos' favorite meals for when we don't have a lot of time. So again, because I have those tortillas always in the fridge, what we do is we grab any leftover lentils and we warm those up and we serve the tacos with a little bit of guacamole. I chop some tomatoes and onions and cilantro for a little fresh salsa, and we pile that on. We add the guacamole and the lentils and the kind of pico de gallo salsa, and we add lots of lettuce. And sometimes if we have a little bit of vegan cheese in the house, we grate a little bit of vegan cheese and put that on top, and that's our meal. And it's something that's quick, that's easy to assemble, and often we have it with a little side salad or something like that. Sometimes we just have them on their own, and they're absolutely delicious. Okay, on to our last question. These questions were so great today. So our last question is from Karen. Karen asks, is it normal to feel a bit emotional while transitioning to a vegan diet? Karen, yes, it's normal. It's normal. It's normal to feel emotional when you're making such a big change. Just think about it. We've been sometimes eating a meat-based diet for years and years, right? We have emotional attachments to these foods. We have favorite foods. We have emotional kind of situations and experiences that are associated with these foods. Many times we're the only people in our family making this change, and that can feel a little bit lonely or isolating in the beginning. Many times we don't know other vegans and we haven't reached out online to find community, and that's one of my tips that I'm going to give you a little bit, in a few moments. So it can be emotional. It can be emotional to change the way you eat. Now, also sometimes what happens is, we start getting these reactions from people when we tell them that we've decided to go vegan. People are often worried that we're gonna miss out on experiences we share together, and that's what makes them a little bit kind of apprehensive at first, right? But I promise you that with time, you're gonna find a balance with sharing time with the people that you love, even if you're vegan and they're eating meat. And I've talked about this at length in our podcast, how to balance things out when your partner isn't vegan. I've got lots of posts. I'm going to try to link them below. I've got lots of posts on that topic if that is the issue. But sometimes it's not even only the social aspects, right? The mere attachment we have to certain foods and having to now think of building our meals in a different way, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. But just as with any change, this passes and we soon find our stride and find kind of our little vegan sweet spot. And that's what I help you do here at Brownble. So yes, it is normal to feel emotional, especially if you're getting strong reactions from the people around you, but even just by making the switch from some foods that we used to love to others. If it comes to that, all I have to say, as you know, is that you can make anything vegan. So make this transition easy on yourself, right? Don't isolate yourself and don't be overly restricted, as I've been talking about in today's video. Try to make sure you're feeling satisfied, that you're you eating foods that are nourishing, that are making you happy. Try to find vegan alternatives for the foods you used to love and build your meals so that you feel like a totally normal person, because you are. I've said it many times before, a vegan diet is simply making the foods you love with plant-based ingredients instead of meat-based ingredients. That's the only difference. Well, that's the only difference when it comes to the food. When it comes to your health and the animals and the environment, the difference is enormous. So please make sure that, tell yourself and remind yourself that what you're doing is important, and fill yourself up with motivation and with pride that you're taking so many steps to move forward in this direction, and that is amazing. And I am very proud of you for making this change. So I'm really glad that you asked this question, because some of us are kind of feeling this way in the beginning and we don't want to say it, and we are struggling and we're just not feeling comfortable. And there are many ways around this. One way is to find community. Try to find other vegans where you live. If there are none, because that can happen. I was the only vegan I knew until my husband went vegan a few months later, and we started meeting other people that were vegan. I was the only vegan. I didn't even know that the word vegan existed before I went vegan. So it can feel a little bit lonely if you don't find community. And if you don't have community where you live, or with friends or with family, find it online. The same is true in our YouTube channel, in our blog, in the online program. There are places to find community. Make sure you're feeling supported and that you're inspired to continue, and take it easy on yourself during these beginning stages. I promise it gets easier with time. And I think that's all I have for you guys today with our questions. If you have more questions, leave them below in the comments, and we will include them in the future video, in our future Q&A, which I think I'm gonna try to make them a little bit more frequent, because I'm getting so many questions from you guys. So stay tuned for that. And today, that's all I have for you. But I'll see you again really soon with more at Brownble. See you then.